Thank you, everyone, for joining us in this inaugural webinar series. My name is Nicola Bernardi, and along with Jim Gavin at the Center for Human Flourishing at Concordia, we are delighted to have you join us. As always, as we settle in, I want to respectfully acknowledge that Concordia University, who is hosting this webinar series, is located on unceded indigenous land. The Kanien'kehá:ka nations are recognized as the custodians of these lands and waters, and Montreal has been for a long time a meeting place for many indigenous people. One moment to acknowledge that. And it is now my enormous pleasure to introduce you to Sarah Strouthopoulos. Sarah is a master educator with over 25 years of experience as a gifted specialist. First as a teacher in a classroom, and more recently as a coach to literally thousands of families through Confident Kids Coaching International, which she founded 7 years ago. Sarah specializes in helping gifted, twice exceptional, and highly sensitive children transform their intensity, their big emotions into confidence, calm, and connection, while also, and very importantly, equipping their parents with the tools to support them long term. I have personally had the enormous joy and privilege to work for Sarah's coaching teams for over 2 years, and it's been one of the most joyful and rewarding work experiences I've ever had. I have also been touched by working with her on a very personal level, because beside being a coach, I'm also a father, and one of my children is a definitely highly sensitive, positive, gifted boy. And well, the experience of being a father to him is rich. I will say that for sure, with lots of highs and some challenges as well. Let's actually check the pulse in the room if I am the only one here, or if you also happen to be the parent or grandparent or otherwise custodian of a highly sensitive or gifted children. And if you are, in 3 or 4 words right now in the chat, what is it like for you to be in that role? Love to hear. Let's see. Interesting, challenging parent here, and I'm grateful. Hard but fulfilling, intense, exhausting, highs and lows, a learning experience, inspiring and so hard. Yes. Okay, you guys are in the right place. I am in the right place, and basically, Sarah is in the right place because I can tell you, I have personally turned to her wisdom, her mindset, the skills that she teaches to the children as well as to the adults. And I find that Sarah has this rare gift of, on the one hand, being an extraordinary knowledge expert. Like, she has kind of studied and experienced and worked through this scenario in all possible angles. And yet at the same time, she has that humanity, humility, and willingness to sit with you and with the children and be real. And that combination, I've been in the space for many, many years, and I can tell you it's rare. It's powerful. It's disarming, and it really helps both the children and the adults shift. So without further ado, getting us into this conversation with Sarah. Sarah, I would love you to introduce yourself and perhaps tell us a little bit about this post that you shared and that I reposted through our newsletter, because that might be a nice way to get to know you, get to know your son, and get to know why all of this work is important to you.
Yeah. Well, I'm just so honored to be here. Thank you so much, Nicolo. And reading the chat, I have to say, having a gifted, sensitive child is a mixed bag. And so all of those emotions and feelings that everyone has typed in, I get it. I've been there and I've seen it in thousands of parents. So I absolutely understand. Now, this for me is like a mission on my heart. So from a young age, I wanted to be a teacher, thinking that was the best way to change kids' lives and empower them. And as I was teaching, then I realized that these kids, like, they just needed even more help beyond the classroom. And so I just made it my mission to, how can I help these kids on this greater level, and realized it is through coaching, it is through helping their parents understand them, because changing that home environment is huge for these kids. These kids, they're most safe at home. And so being able to help with that. And then also on a more personal level, like, I'm mother to a profoundly gifted child. He's now 15 years old. I can't believe it. And then my brother is gifted and has been through many challenges and still struggles with his giftedness today. So seeing it from that perspective as well, and what I wished had been in place for him beyond, even though my parents, did everything that they could, they still didn't know. They didn't have the tools, the strategies when he was so much younger, when things could have been really put into place and set him up for success earlier. So I'm just so glad to be here. I recently went on this adventure with my family, and that is the Via Ferrata. So we have, Nicolo has a picture here of me and my son on this cliff edge. And I want to speak to this for a few different reasons. Because first of all, this is not a spot that I would have imagined I would be. If you talk to my family a few days before this, and this just happened a couple weeks ago, they would have said, there is no way Sarah would do this. There is absolutely no way. And I, in that moment, was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to die. I'm safe. I can do this. One hand here, one foot there. And I was completely like corded in, right? Like, I had a harness on, I was safe. And I kept looking to my son being like, okay, he's doing it. He's safe. I took inspiration from him. And this is a child. He calls himself an indoor kid. He would be so scared to go, like, he did not want to leave the house. He just likes to stay home in general. And just over the years, it's gotten easier and easier and easier. But I was able to like borrow his calm in that moment on that cliff and be like, nope, we've got this. And I just like accepted and felt like love for myself and love and support from my family. And of course, my husband was there taking the picture as well. So it was just such a big moment for me to kind of tackle some anxiety, do something I was uncomfortable with, and push through, even though I was scared. And again, take that inspiration from my child.
And what is that Finn said to you? And
yes. Finn was like, Mom, I can't believe you're here. I can't believe you're doing this. And I was like, I know, I can't believe I'm here either. But he was there cheering me on and just saying, Mom, you can do this. You're doing so well. And these were things that I remember saying to him years ago in different situations over time, that I'm like, oh my gosh, it's reflected back to me. And it lands so powerfully when it's your own child saying it to you. So yeah, it was really, it felt so beautiful. And I think too, again, it's like, I'm afraid of heights. There was no way I would do this. And so I just felt like that inspiration and support on this whole new level, and seeing this growth in my son to be able to change from like, he's taken, right? Sometimes we just feel like our kids, like they just need every last drip of like support and energy from us. And instead, they're borrowing our calm all the time, right? Our emotions, and looking for us for support and help. And for him to just give it so easily and freely to me, and for me to be able to accept it in that moment, just felt like such a like coming full circle moment. Yeah.
That's right. And so while I want to acknowledge that he's still working and you are still working together, right? This is not a one and done, and that's
no.
Live there happily forever after, right? Work is still in progress as always, yet also honoring like the beauty and the power of the moment. I guess the rest of this conversation might also be like, okay, how do we get from wherever you are to that? And so perhaps you can share with us some of the first frameworks that can be useful to have in our minds when it comes to giftedness and sensitivity. Ideas like words like over-excitabilities, asynchronous development. Can you help us understand what these things mean?
Yeah. It is so helpful to have these structures. They've done a lot of research on the gifted brain, right? How kids show up and what is really going on under the surface, because sometimes it's so easy to just say, it's just their anxiety. These kids are just too much. They're just so sensitive. All these negative things are so easy to just like catch on the surface. When underneath that, why is it showing up this way? It's because of the overexcitabilities. So there's 5 overexcitabilities, and this is the wiring in their brains, that they're just brains. They believe whatever their brains tell them. They think it's just there's no off switch. Their brains are just going, going, going all the time. And we can call that intellectual overexcitability, where there's thinking outside the box kids. And then we have the emotions that are so high, that emotional overexcitability or emotional intensity. And that gives us a framework of just knowing, like, yeah, these kids do experience the world like so much more than everyone else. And so the emotions can be higher. And that means higher highs, but higher lows, right? So there's like everything can be so much more, and that can be overwhelming to them and then to the world around them, right? To teachers, to you as parents or grandparents, definitely to siblings, and all those different things. And then we have like imaginational overexcitability. And so their imaginations can sometimes like bring so much creativity and wonder, and they can be great actors, and but it can also go on the other side of giving them nightmares, because they can be so vivid in their understanding of that. And then we have like sensory stuff, so that sensual overexcitability that just makes like, oh my gosh, things, loud noises, there's so much that's loud, there's so much that I don't like that texture, I don't like that taste. Or I love that texture and I love that taste. It goes both ways. And so all these different things make them who they are. And it's just understanding those, like how they're showing up, how they're experiencing the world makes it so different. And then if we put that on top of the asynchronous development, where I hear parents say all the time, like, I don't get it. My child, like, they talk like a mini adult. I just had a parent that shared a message with me just yesterday who said, but he's talking like this mini adult. He's getting his hair cut. He's talking like this mini adult. He's having a hard time because the sensory stuff on his head. And then all of a sudden you can just see like he's trying to hold it together. But these kids, right, they can be reading at levels of high school when they're in elementary school. And then at the same time, they have these big explosive meltdowns. They're still like having trouble sometimes reading social cues. And so it feels like they're multiple ages in one body. And that can be really hard to understand as well, because you feel like as a parent, like, wait, they're getting this. They can have these deep conversations. I don't understand why they can't brush their teeth. Like, brushing their teeth is so simple. Why aren't they showering when I ask? Why are they pushing back, right? And saying no and refusing to do the simple stuff, or feeling like they can't problem solve. Like my son last night, every once in a while, these things come up. And he's like, okay, I have a small container and I have some marinara sauce left. It's like, what do I do with it? What do I do with it? Like, well, how do I put it away? And my husband's like, well, you just put it away. And he's like, well, do I need to cover it? Does it need to be covered? Maybe it doesn't need to be covered. And so that's when our kids, right? The problem solving like falls out the door, because they're so focused on other things. They're focused on bigger things. They're thinking about these existential questions, that the simplest thing in front of them, they're like just frozen. And so that's that complex brain and it can be so confusing to parent. And we just think, well, you could figure that out, figure this out. And if we think about it in another way, it's like these kids, if we're like in this world where built for maybe minivans, these kids are more like the high-powered sports car, right? They're the Ferraris. And there's a mismatch. But if we put them like on a racetrack, they're going to do so well. But when they're not on the racetrack, that's where the issues come up. Yeah.
You mentioned 4 of the excitabilities: intellectual, emotional, imaginational, and sensory. What's the 5th one?
Psychomotor. This one, it can be confused with ADHD. They're the energy. This is when they can be the nonstop, this nonstop talker. They can be the movement. It's the energy feels like it can just go on forever, or they're fidgety, have a hard time sitting still, that kind of stuff.
Cool. Let's everybody share in the chat if you're kind of resonating with what Sarah is sharing, which of the 5 dials is turned up the highest in your child, and could be, of course, more than one. So we'll get a bit of a snapshot of.
Yeah. So it might be the intellectual, right? Thinking outside the box. They want to learn, but on their terms, or the imaginational, right? With the vivid pictures. Yeah. Okay. Lots of emotional, though. That one I see the most. Intellectual and emotional, I'd say probably are the top ones. But sometimes kids have all of them, but at various degrees, right? So I'm seeing a lot. Yeah. Psychomotor. Yeah, describing your son. I love that. Yeah, but what's all of them? Right? Absolutely.
So now somebody could say, so what? Like, once we understand which of these intensities, or which pattern of this intensity is the most important, what it becomes possible that may be possible without even just having that kind of lens?
Yeah. Well, then we understand that they're not doing these things on purpose. Then we understand it can help us then show up more in compassion to be like, okay, it's their wiring. It's not because I did anything wrong as a parent. It's not because they're just like this difficult kid that's just acting out or is disrespectful. But there is real reason for that. And that can help us show up as parents in a different way, to show up in love, compassion, and understanding. And then we can meet our kids more in connection and understanding, because we really truly do understand like where they're coming from a bit more. Maybe not exactly, but we can at least empathize instead of go into blame or shoulds and all those different kinds of things. So it helps us then show up in more calm and confidence when we understand, what's under the surface.
Let's dive right into that. For example, help me understand, and maybe my other people. Often I find that my boy and others have this give up kind of impulse when something is hard, which is so confusing, right? Because I know that he has, in some areas, I don't know, limitless, I guess, very, very great capabilities. So where does that come from? How can I better understand it? Is it because they absorb some kind of idea that it should be easy for them, or is they lack confidence or something else? What is that?
Absolutely, they do. So for these kids, they've trusted their brain since they were born, and so many things have come easily to them. And so their ability to have that frustration tolerance is really low for most gifted kids, high ability, just fast learning kids, because, so much has come so fast. So they think that's how things should be. That's what feels most comfortable. And that ability to withstand frustration or find something difficult is just not programmed in them as easily, and is uncomfortable. So we need to expand that comfort zone around these things and help them have challenges that are doable. We don't want to just throw them to the wolves, but we want to make sure that they can have some challenges that are reasonable and not have everything easy all the time. And that's a good thing. That because they have in their mind, I shouldn't make a mistake, right? That can be the perfectionism talking. Things should be easy. I'm just going to give up. It's easier to just not even show up, right? It's just to stop, right? And pull back, because there might be shame coming up for them. It could be that, this is just too much for me. So then that's when they start to just like shut down, when they don't have the frameworks of how to push through, and they don't have the thoughts that are helping them be like, no, this is okay. It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay for this to be hard, and you can push through. Yeah.
So are you saying, is it possible for them to build a framework to push through?
Absolutely. And I mean, let me give you an example. So when Finn was my son, his name's Finn, yeah. So and when he was in kindergarten, we noticed, right? A lot of things were easy for him. And so we put him in piano lessons, thinking, okay, we want some challenge, but it was a little bit too much, right? At that time. And he was just like shut down. This is too much. I want to learn how to play, but more on my own terms. Like somebody now is telling me what to do. I'm not sure I can do it. The fear can rise up. And a lot of our kids have this underlying anxiety or fear, again, because of perfectionism. They want to do things just right. They think that's the way it should be. And so that was difficult. And so we needed to take him out of those classes for a little bit and help build up some of that resilience, that ability to believe in himself, that power to push through even when things were hard. And so, absolutely, we need to put our kids in those situations. It is absolutely something that they can learn how to do, but it can take some time and we need to be really intentional about it and not save them all the time. But again, we need to do it in a supportive way that feels good, especially when they're really young. Or if even when they're older, if this is really new to them. So that's definitely something that we've had to think about. What is it that Finn's doing that's challenging in any part? If school's easy all the time, this is not serving him. We need to have something outside of school then that can be more challenging if school's not going to work with us and be able to provide more challenge there. Yeah.
Totally. And maybe in just a few minutes, we're going to explore what some of this more kind of nitty-gritty interactions could look like. Before we go there, another scenario a common scenario where I think understanding is often hard because it's so confusing. It's when they are like angels at school and the teachers are, oh, it's amazing, blah, blah. And then home, it's kind of meltdown, like explosion, like total collapse. How do we understand that?
Yeah. It's the most common scenario that we hear about is the kids that are trying to hold it all together at school, right? They might be masking what they're really feeling emotionally at school because they don't know how to process their emotions. So all they know how to do is like shove it in the suitcase, like shut it down, right? But it's like their cup is overflowing. It can only hold so much, and they've held it in, and then they get home, and finally it's like, it's more of their safe space. And so they let it all out. They can't hold it together anymore. And it looks like when they walk in the door, like the littlest thing, like suddenly something goes wrong. You didn't have out the right snack for them. And it's meltdown. You're like, whoa, what just happened? It's like, why is it a big deal? Like I have out a cheese stick instead of a cereal bar. And it wasn't about that. It's because they don't know how to process their emotions. They don't even know what they're feeling. They've been masking, trying to look perfect oftentimes, and because some have fear of embarrassment and all those different things going on for them. And then they get home, and then that's the explosion. Yeah. And so that's right. It's the unprocessed emotions that are really coming out then from the day.
Okay, so the question is exploding. The chat is exploding with questions along the lines of how this, how that, right? With all sorts of scenarios. So, and it's probably a very rich and long conversation, and we're going to start to kind of lay down some tracks here. So one of the pillars that you always talk about, Sarah, is regulate your own emotions first. And that is also kind of not always easy, right? Like we are the exhausted, triggered parents, and we have to be the calm ones. Why does it have to start there? And what does it actually look like?
It's so important, right? We need that oxygen mask on ourselves first before we can help anyone else. And again, it's because our kids are deeply feeling, intense kids, and they can feel our feelings. They know, like we think we can be like, no, I'm holding it in. I'm calm. I'm really, really calm. And we're forcing that calm, but they really know what's going on and they can sense that. And so we don't want to add fuel to the fire with our own emotions. So, and we can so easily also the same, right? We can pick up their emotions, take those on, and all of a sudden we're triggered. And then we have two people dysregulated. So the only way that we can help them is by being regulated ourselves. And that means like truly feeling calm, like honest calm. That we're not, it's not forced calm, like, oh, just hold it together. And sometimes we have to start that way at the beginning a little bit, but it's really about having your own kind of practice. And in my program, I call it more of an inner peace, where you're checking in with yourself, really in tune with what's going on with you and doing what you need to do. You have strategies to do yourself. So you, in that moment, and you can practice them outside of the moment, but in that moment, when your child needs you to show up, you do your process so you can show up for them. And then you're going to be able to problem solve, because parenting is an art and a science, right? We have great strategies, but no great strategy is going to land if you're dysregulated. If your tone is off, if you're bringing energy of just do the thing, like I've had it, just do the thing. If you're bringing that energy to the situation, you can say all the right, perfect things and it's not going to land. So again, your energy in that moment matters. And so, and oftentimes I say, yeah, they're borrowing your calm. And that's a piece of it too, is that they can then sense, I can now rest, right? I'm safe is what the child, right, without maybe consciously thinking it, is when we're calm for them, when we're showing their emotions aren't too much for them, then all of a sudden they can relax a little and be like, oh, I'm not broken. There's nothing wrong. My parent is okay. They're showing up for me. I'm loved. I'm safe. All those, we're sending all those messages when we ourselves are truly calm. And oftentimes what we say in the program is like that calm confidence we want to show up with as parents, not, like we're calm energy and we know what we're doing. That, yeah, really important.
Awesome. And so if that is maybe, well, probably the very first step is to have in your mind the whole over-excitability and asynchronous development reference. And then after that, maybe, the first thing you actually do is everything you just described. I believe that then what you help people learn how to do is decode the message and build a connection. What does that mean?
Oh, yes. Yes. So absolutely. We need that frame of reference, right? This is the over-excitabilities. This is not disrespect that's talking here. And we need to then oftentimes get curious and really just think about, like, observe what's really going on here and look for clues. Sometimes we need to ask questions to really get further understanding of what's really going on. And what might they be avoiding? So let me kind of tell you about a situation. So this kind of like put it into action with a recent situation with my son. So recently, well, my son now, 15 years old, he's now taking a driver's ed class. And this is not preferred. This is not a preferred activity. Driver's ed is not fun. So if you can think about it for you guys with younger kids with homework, they're doing something they don't want to do. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. Like I thought you were supposed to have a certain amount of work done on driver's ed by now, Finn. So tell me what's going on here. And he's like, Mom, I thought we agreed. I'm going to have it all ready by Sunday night. And I was like, oh, here we go again. Because no, I thought it was by Friday night. So we have this miscommunication, right? And it can happen anytime with homework. Oh, I thought now they're playing video games and you thought they were supposed to be doing their homework. And they're like, no, I thought we said this. And so we have this miscommunication. And in this moment, I was not at my best. And I was kind of like, Finn, I'm not sure. And so I was like, okay, I can feel the heat rising because I'm like, I think he's trying to pull the wool over my eyes here. And because it was so clear in my mind. And then I looked at him And I thought, and I was like, I could see her like a little bit of like frustration, but also like maybe a little emotion behind his eyes of being like, honestly, he thought he thought he had understood correctly. And what I will say about our kids is we think we are so clear. We're sending such a clear message, and they are misunderstanding and they are looking at it from a whole other perspective. And the clear message is not clear. And because in his mind, it was, I truly believe, in looking back at it, it was that he thought it was Sunday. So I took a moment and I was like, Finn, I can see we're not getting anywhere right here. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to come back so we can continue this conversation. But I want to think about this in another way. So I take a quick break. I think about it, and I'm like, okay, we need to get on the same page, because if I just keep saying, no, you needed to have this done Friday night, all of a sudden we are in a power struggle and nothing is going to happen that's helpful. We're both going to be mad at each other and there's no connection that's happening. And if we know anything, we need to connect in order to move through anything. And in fact, these disagreements or these hard parts, we can have connection and grow stronger together. And so instead, what I said was like, Finn, I think we have a misunderstanding. And so let's get on the same page, right? Let's take a moment. Let's get on the same page now and see. And I was like, because this isn't just about miscommunication. I can see there's also an avoidance of doing the thing. There's an avoidance of doing the driver's ed. There's an avoidance when there's homework situations, there's an avoidance of doing that homework. And we got to get to the bottom of what's really going on. So I'm like, what's the hardest part of doing the driver's ed stuff? Because I can see this is just an issue. And he was like, Mom, this driver's ed is boring, right? And we hear it all the time in homework. It's boring. And I was like, well, tell me more about that. He's like, Mom, I feel like this was made back in the 50s, right? There's all this old school stuff. Like the videos are so like out of date. It's just all this. It's like, so he gives me like 10 different reasons why this is just not working for him. And then I was like, I said, well, how did you choose this course? Because it was actually a choice between his father and him. I wasn't involved in that. And he's like, well, Dad and I just found it. And I said, well, do you have to take this course? And he said, oh, I don't know. So we did some research together and we figured out that actually are way better courses out there for driver's ed. We just need to shift this a little bit. So I said, okay, let's refocus. Let's try this new course. And he did. And he was like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. So now we had something that was like terrible, right? That to compare it to. So suddenly this new course looks amazing in comparison. But what we did in that was we problem solved together. We got on the same side of the table. We were a team figuring this out. And then he was able to be like, okay, yes, I can do this. This is going to be so much easier. So in the homework, obviously you can't change the homework for them. You can't, right? But there are things that they can control. What can we control in those situations? Well, we can build in breaks. We can build in the location. Where could it be better? We can build in, should we play music? Like there's other things that are controllable around that we might need to problem solve. Maybe we need to break the tasks down into a smaller amount. So there are things that we can do so that we can show them that we're a team. And it's not just them and us just power struggling through and forcing them through, because oftentimes there's something missing that they need a little bit more support with, and they might need a snack, right? So it's just like, oh, well, you just needed food. Now I understand. So yeah, I hope that kind of paints a picture of that a little bit more.
Very clear. And one thing I want to highlight, because I learned it from you and I want everybody to catch it because it was going quickly as you were saying it. You spoke about you saw the emotion behind his eyes. Everybody, please get the level of attentiveness, nuance, and presence in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
involves. And without that, that level of presence that you were able to bring up to that moment is what then kind of made everything else that you said afterwards possible. And by the way, the very first step was actually I need to step away for a second because I can feel too hot and I can drive us totally again to the wall. But like that level of attentiveness and presence and eagerness to connect beyond words.
Yeah.
It just got me in it. I want everybody to catch.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can speak to that just a little bit more, because for some kids, it's going to be that they go, you get emotional and go more to crying. Other kids will go to yelling. But as soon as, right, like we can see like that trigger in them and see like, ooh, there's a change. We've hit a tough spot for them and they're getting triggered and there is something more going on here. But if we meet yelling with yelling, if I had been like, oh my gosh, if Finn's all of a sudden started yelling and he's done that before, then suddenly, and I'm yelling, right, we both lost. Nothing productive is happening here. We're not connecting. And now we have to start over. This is going to take way, way longer than we need. But because I did, thanks for pointing that out, notice like, ooh, there's a flicker in there. I know for him what that means and that we got to pay attention to what is happening in our kids and what's going on. And it can take some time to really, really notice and observe and take to heart. And then that's like, sometimes that can be like, oh yeah, that kind of put me back on track of, okay, it's time for me to use all my skills, right? I need my toolkit. I need my own, right? We're in action here. And that's enough. Yeah.
Amazing. Sarah, I would like to maybe spend the last few minutes taking some questions from the chat and also maybe taking some scenarios from the chat for you to give us a glimpse. This is not a full breakdown because that will take us a whole different time frame, and hopefully we will have the time frame in the future. For today is help us get a glimpse into how would you deconstruct a scenario and basically tackle some specific. Would it be okay if I just pick some from the chat?
Please.
Or
Absolutely.
did you see one already that caught your attention that you want to take on?
I haven't. They've been coming through so fast. You guys have so much to say. I love it.
So here is one. My biggest challenge is cleaning, even as simple as cleaning their plate, putting away a book or a toy before moving on to the next one. It usually results in a meltdown, and I can't understand it because they want a clear table and floor, and they want to know where their things are, and they want to protect their stuff from damage, but also they just don't want to do it.
Isn't that the truth, right? And then, Jessica, this reminds me, I'm like, these kids can be so sensitive to so many things, and then they come across so insensitive in what they say. It's like, how, right? What? And that's kind of the push and pull here. And so, yeah. And so it's just like, okay, what's really going on here? They want things a certain way. Our kids, they do. They can even make up rules in their mind. It needs to be this way. For me to do this, it has to be this way. And oftentimes we think of our kids as these rigid thinkers, where, yeah, we can build in more flexibility over time, but oftentimes there's a reason for it. And so it doesn't mean that's like the final place they need to be, that they always need to be so rigid, but we kind of need to meet them where they're at and kind of just understand what's going on here. So, gosh. And so kind of understanding that I think is important. And so it seems like I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. I can't understand it because, okay, so it sounds like putting, like, even just having them put things away is the tricky part here. Even though they like things clean, they're having trouble doing it. And that initiation process can be really tricky for our kids as well, because we know transitions are the hardest things. They all of a sudden like, they're comfortable in one thing. They're eating, and all of a sudden now it's like that transition from the end of the meal to clearing things away. And they can have all these different kinds of rules like, oh, well, mom clears my plate, especially if we've done that certain times. And suddenly you're asking me to clear my own plate. Well, that feels unfair because that's not what normally happens. And so all of a sudden there can be just so many thoughts going through their brain. Again, they're trusting their thoughts. They're thinking that this is the way it should be. So we have to kind of push against that a little bit and create that space of, hey, this feels uncomfortable. Why don't we all do it at the same time? So we'll all stand up together. Let's all do this, and we'll put our plates away in the dishwasher. And then I'll come over here and I'll show you exactly how to stack. We were working with a ninth grader the other day, and the dad was saying, "Oh, I just realized like it's always such a mess around the kitchen, right around the sink area." And he's like, "She never puts her plates like in the dishwasher." And he was trying to understand why. And then as they had more of a conversation, it was clear, like, she's like, "I don't know how to stack them in the dishwasher," right? A ninth grader. And she's like, "So I was afraid I'd do it wrong. So I didn't do it at all. And it was just causing all this controversy." But she didn't really want to admit it either. So again, we kind of have to show our kids sometimes and just be on their team like, "Hey, let me show you, let's do this together, let me show you how." And we might have to do that a few times to get them started, but once we are showing them and be like, "Okay, now you do it by yourself," kind of scaffolding a little bit and making it more comfortable and more regular. So the more that we can build routine into things like, "Oh yeah, we just always clear our plate after each meal, like that's a thing we do in our family," then it becomes more easy too, because their brain is like, "Oh yeah, this is something we always do. This is manageable. This is normal. This is the normal." Suddenly putting away a book. But yeah, we want to make sure that one thing at a time. I love teaching kids to clean up after themselves, can be so hard. And at the same time, it is so rewarding because once you get into the practice and you show them how you do it with them, then it becomes second nature, but it can be tricky at times, especially if they feel like that transitional stage where they're not used to it. And they're going to push back. Remember, our kids will push back. Anything new that we change, like they're going to push back and be like, "Oh, my brain says get out of this." They're not really in touch with that, but they're just going to push back because they're like, this doesn't feel normal. And they're going to see like, "Oh, maybe I can get out of it. So I'm going to push back like 3 or 5 times. And if I get out of it once, then I'm just to trying to get out of it." So we really need to be able to hold limits too and be like, "No, here I am showing up in love, but I'm also firm and I'm not right. I'm not just going to give in. That's not going to serve them." So I hope that helps. I know there was a lot here.
Beautiful. And I want to underline that initiation moment, how like the transition aspect of starting that activity, how delicate that is, and how sometimes that isn't the entire crux of the matter.
Yes.
It may seem like it's about not wanting to put away the dishes, and in fact, it's just about not wanting to stop the thing that you're doing to start a different thing. It's
absolutely
beautiful. Now, like we could continue to run this example a million times, right? And these are all kind of narrow focused. How do I help my child in this particular moment, right? And instead of throwing you other 10 individual specific moments, I think you already gave us some very clear examples of how do you do those moments. But then the questions that I think reading through the chat I see emerging is that all? Like, is then just correctly handling a million individual moments of putting away the dishes, or is there more that goes into raising a gifted, and thriving child?
Yeah, such a good question. And there is more. There is absolutely. So what I would say, like, if we want if we want thriving kids, right? Then there are some things that we kind of need to build within them and cultivate that might be already there, but we need to kind of bring to the surface even more. And that is helping them build that more emotional intelligence, so their own emotional regulation, so they can process those emotions, so they're not just going from 0 to 60. We've got to build that in, and that starts with like building vocabulary, so we're on the same page. It's by role modeling what you're doing when you're in a tough situation, role modeling what emotions you're feeling, and again, how you're dealing with them. And those can be the joyful ones, really capitalizing on those, but it can also be the difficult ones, the unpleasant ones. There's a lot more words for the unpleasant emotions than for the joyful ones for a reason. And so being able to have those conversations and talk to our kids and connect on a deeper level beyond just on the surface level behaviors, but really on that deeper level, so they can start understanding like what emotions are coming up and that they can regulate them. Because confidence is the other big thing. Our kids, we need really confident kids. And that means confidence so they can stand up for themselves, confidence so that they can advocate for themselves in tricky situations. Sometimes our kids tend to be shy or say too much. What is healthy communication so we can actually be heard? And that's all pieces of this puzzle. But to build that confidence, we really need to help them be able to manage their own emotions, because if their emotions are running willy-nilly, they're not going to have the confidence. It's going to be fake confidence. It's going to either be overconfidence that we see in our kids sometimes with them bragging about how smart they are. And that's not real confidence either. So we need to start with that self-regulation. It's built from within, that they feel like I'm not broken. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm wired differently, which is beautiful and complicated, and I need to learn how to manage it so I can use these over-excitabilities to my advantage, because there are positives and things to manage around every over-excitability, but there's a lot of positives to lean into that can be strengths when leveraged the right way. So those kinds of things, understanding themselves on a whole new level, loving themselves, is part of it. And accepting their emotions and knowing these emotions are temporary. All of those are pieces of kind of building that more full picture. And then they'll be able to communicate with us better because they'll know what's going on. And we can have conversations. There'll still be eye rolling here and there. There's still going to be challenges and meltdowns, but they're going to be faster, shorter. We can work through them, and we know how. And they know how. So, yeah.
What's one concrete example that everybody could take in their family tonight of this longer term kind of building, as opposed to just coping and handling kind of work, something that we could all work on tonight and in this weekend?
Yeah, such a good thing. Well, for sure, bringing that curiosity into your interactions with your child, trying to withhold judgment, right? Not going straight to judgment or here we go again, we're caught in this cycle, but instead showing up in true curiosity of what is really going on. What can I notice? What can I understand under the surface? Could this be the asynchronous development, the over-excitabilities that are showing up? What does my child need? And you might even do that by asking some questions to your child, but really be careful of asking why questions, because what I found, when we ask why questions, then the kids start making up things. They don't know why, right? You're like, why'd you do that? And they're like, well, I don't know, or he made me do it, or I was, we can't, that doesn't help. So, but if we can ask questions more like what questions? What was so hard about this? Or what's making you the most nervous about doing that? Then all of a sudden we have a new understanding, because we've worked with kids where it's like, oh my gosh, they're going to just anger all the time and they're refusing to do chores. And then what we realize is, oh my gosh, once we did some digging, the refusal of doing the chores was really because of an anxiety related to that they were nervous about doing it wrong. They didn't know where to start. They were going to have to go into the backyard alone to do that chore. And that was really scary for them. And they didn't want to talk about it, so they never brought it up. And we can figure out so many more things and understand our kids on a deeper level. So just showing up in curiosity, I think, is one super concrete thing, one little step that you can take.
Fantastic. Sarah, do you want us to continue for a couple more minutes? Or
I'm flexible. I can take like one more question if you want.
okay. First, maybe a comment I want to make that you can elaborate, and then I'll take one last question from the chat.
Sure.
I love that you're bringing up the why questions because I think, and how they spectacularly backfire. I think that, at least for me, it is linked to the impulse to fix. And I would love you to comment on that because that seems to be working pretty well when I'm talking with my peers, other adults. Why is this? Okay, let's fix it, right? It seems so straightforward. And that is completely not landing anywhere with my 6-year-old. How come?
The fix it energy, you mean? I love talking to people about the fix it energy. And it can be, oh my gosh, I know in talking to my husband and some dads in the program, like
Exactly.
especially males tend to go into fix it energy. And when we just need to show up, right? Well, gosh, there was this great book on super communicators. And I was like, oh, sometimes it's just understanding, what do our kids really need? They need us to fix it? Do they just need us to, do they just need to share or do they need a hug? And I always come back to like those kind of little principles. It's rarely that they want anything fixed from us. If they do, they're not be like, can you help me with this? Really what they want is like to be heard. I just want to be heard. I want to feel understood. That's another gift that we can give our kids is what I'm going to say is this. Our kids' emotions will never they're not going to, like the meltdown isn't going to ease until they feel heard and understood by us. So if we go in with fix it energy, going in trying to fix things in the middle of a meltdown, suddenly the meltdown's getting worse. 100%. Or we're like, just calm down, just calm down. Well, then we're not showing we understand at all. We're meeting their energy of big meltdown and we're coming up and we're showing like, oh my gosh, like, you don't get it. And I'm going to get bigger because you're not understanding. And so again, we're coming in, we're trying to solve things, but they just want to be understood. Everyone just wants to be understood. So how can we show them that we're understanding? Sometimes that's with empathy. Sometimes that's with connection, usually a combination. And that's what they need. They don't need our fixing. And the fixing, like if you want to get to the educate part, that part, right? What's the takeaway? That's the least important thing. But that comes later, far after the meltdown, when they're calm, everyone's calm. And we're like, okay, we could probably all have done that better differently, differently or better next time. And that's more than the reflection. That's not happening in that moment. So again, connection is such a big, important piece of this, not fixing them, just showing understanding. So thank you for pointing that out.
Last question. Everybody, meanwhile, before I ask it, I'm asking to all of you, if you were to do just one thing differently today, one small shift, something that you're taking away from that conversation, what would that be? Please write it in the chat. Meanwhile, for you, Sarah, one last question that I want to pull from the chat is, how about teenagers, kids? Like when they're past the age where maybe all of this, curiosity, connection doesn't quite, at least to some parents, seem so natural anymore because there is a different relationship, there is a different exploration on their end happening. What does this look like?
Yeah. With teenagers, it feels like it's so different, and I'm not really sure that it is. In my experience with my son, what it's going to look like is this, and in just working with some of the older kids as well. What they're going to, we think, okay, teenagers, they know what they want, they need now. We think they know what they need now. They say, go away or don't come in my room. This is one that came up recently with some parents. They're like, but she says that she doesn't want us in her room. And so then we just leave. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So this poor child is struggling and she's by herself and they're believing her story. Don't buy their story. They don't know what they need. So yeah, in some instances, you want to listen to them because when they're calm, when they really are calm and collected, yeah, we want to listen and hear them for sure. But when they're in a struggle moment, They're just pushing us away, and we need to come in closer. And I will say that even if, and it might look like we're sitting outside their door, right, to their bedroom, being like, I'm here if you need me. But I would say more often than not, we need to go into their room and just be like, hey, because with my son, he'll be in his room and he's like doing something, and I'll just go in to say hi. He'll be like, Mom, go away. And I'll be like, all right, I'm like, oh, this is just the start. Like, that's not, if I listen to that and left, like, that's such a missed opportunity. So I'll go in and be playful, and I'll sit next to him. And, we have a thing, like, we used to tickle each other. Like, I really hate tickling. So, but he loves tickling. So anyways, it's definitely a dynamic and like inside joke for us. So I'll still do that. Like, there is still such a young kid in there. And it is like, we think our kids are so much older just because he's taller than me now, right? Has some of the acne, the puberty's going on, all that different kind of stuff. But there is still that little kid in there too, at the same time as there's the adult. It's the asynchronous, the same thing. And so being able to be and show up and be playful and be able to connect. And you know what? Our kids, I will say, these kids are generally kids who are easily hyper-focused, and they have not just a love for certain things, they have a passion. What is it that your child's passionate about? If you can get them talking about that thing, and that's the secret too, get them talking about whatever it is. For my son, digital music. It can be digital music making, anything around that. I got him. Even Legos still. He will still talk about Legos a bit. It can be like his favorite video game these days, right? It's forever changing. Okay, what's the newest one now? We just recently we've been listening to the Hail Mary Project in the car. So I know like that book, he has so many thoughts about it. But in any weak moment, I can talk to him about his opinions on AI. He has so many opinions, not positive at the moment, on AI and how it's ruining the world. And I can absolutely get him into a conversation any moment. So what is it for your child, right? Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you, Sarah, for this gift. I feel I'm going to re-listen to this throughout the summer. It's going to be really helping me, and we're going to make the recording available as soon as possible so that maybe it will be helpful for you as well. Thank you for gifting this to us. The coordinates to connect with Sarah are on the website, and I do invite and recommend that you guys check her work out. As far as Center for Human Flourishing, we will be, with today closing this inaugural series. There is lots more to come in our program. We are very excited about what we're building for the fall. Stay tuned in the newsletter, as we will let you know when that is ready to be shared. Happy summer.
Thanks so much for having me.
Take care, everybody.